And we'll do it live. We'll do it live. So there's this thing everyone's talking about called the woke right. And I guess I kind of know what that means. But anyway, there's this James Lindsay guy. And I want you to hear this is so funny. I'm listening to this thing. I guess this is the Republican Party or something. Is this what? Let's listen to what this guy says.
Has been spreading among conservatives, and it could destroy the Republican Party.
Oh, okay. Destroy the Republican Party. Let's hear that again. Hold on a second.
Woke ideology has been spreading among conservatives, and it could destroy the Republican Party.
Okay, that's the intro. What does that even mean? Okay, wait. He says woke ideology is spreading among conservatives and it could destroy the Republican Party. I'm all for destroying the Republican Party, but what does this? What does it mean that woke ideology is spreading? What does that even mean? I have no idea what this means. I'm trying to figure out what they're trying to say.
Woke ideology has been spreading among conservatives, and it could destroy the Republican Party.
Okay, well, destroying the Republican Party is a good idea. That's why I voted for Donald Trump in 2015. Because I wanted to destroy the Republican Party. Isn't that what we're trying to do? I thought that's what we're trying to do. Is that not what we're doing? That's what I'm trying to do. Well, anyway, let's see what this idiot has to say.
Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell.
America Uncovered.
Ago, the Soviets had a plan to destroy America.
Wait a minute. He says the Soviets had a plan to destroy America. Okay.
Not with bombs or guns, but by subverting American culture.
Okay, subverting American culture, which is what exactly, according to you? Chris Chappell, is that this guy's name? What does he think American culture is? Let's find out.
By taking the existing movement for racial and gender equality.
Okay, so there was a movement in racial and gender equality. And I guess this was in the 1960s. Is that what he said? Hold on, let's go back.
I'm Chris Chappell.
Chris Chappell's this guy's name. I guess he's a Republican.
More than half a century ago, the Soviets had a plan to destroy America, not with bombs or guns, but by subverting American culture, by taking the existing movement for racial and gender equality and subverting it using the ideology of class struggle.
Okay, so here's one of the premises of this guy's argument, is that the struggle for gender equality, was it gender and what equality? Say that again. What?
By subverting American culture, by taking the existing movement for racial and gender equality and subverting it using the ideology of
boom. This is it. This explains what the Republican group is trying to say is American culture. The existing movement for racial and gender equality. Right. Well, the existing movement for racial and gender equality in the 1960s is why America turned into a giant toilet. That's what ruined America. So what he wants to say is that's American culture, right? The Republicans are trying to say that the 1960s civil rights movement, that's American culture. That's American culture. Because we're all equal. We're not all equal. And it's not just that we're not all equal. Nothing in this universe is equal to anything else. And so anyone who tells you that anything in this universe is equal to something else has a false premise. So you're going to build an entire political system on a false premise, which is that we're all equal. There's no such if there's one thing that's totally true about this universe, it's that nothing in it is equal to anything else. There are no two atoms that are equal to each other. You'll never find two atoms or subatomic particles that have the exact same anything. They all vary somewhat. If only in there are different spaces, but even beyond that, there's going to be some variation. If you could really measure each one down, there is nothing in this universe that's equal. So where did the ideology that we are all equal come from? Well, it is in the founding documents of the founding fathers that said, they said something about equality. What did they say? They said that, what did they say? What did the founding fathers say about equality? Founding fathers, equality. What did they say? because whatever they said was really dumb. Well, it wasn't necessarily dumb. That all men are created equal, possessing inherent rights like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So what did they mean by this statement right here? All men are created equal. Put that into the context of what they're actually talking about. They're talking about the monarchy. They're talking about the monarchy because the monarchs are saying we are sovereign, and the founding fathers are saying no, you're not. You're born just like everybody else. You're not born a special. You're not inherently better than us. I think that's the point. You're not inherently sovereign. And so that could be taken away from you, right? And it was taken away from them. So the founding fathers were right about that. They're not inherently anything. Because but it says here that all men are created with equal it says that all men are created equal. That's not true. But so all men are not created equal. That part is not true. And that part was, I know why they said that. They said that in the context of the monarchy and the aristocracies that they were trying to overthrow. And they came up with a new title, which was citizen. We're all citizens. And of course, who were the citizens? Well, that was defined by the 1790s Naturalization Act that said to be a citizen, you have to be a free white person. So free white persons were citizens. So right off the bat, what they meant by equality had to do with the monarchy. It didn't have to do with anything else. Because equality, broad scale equality, anyone who tells you anything is equal to anything else in this universe is a liar and has a false ideology. So anyway, that's what the founding fathers were talking about. Let's hear. So this guy's trying to say, let's listen to him again.
More than half a century ago, the Soviets had a plan to destroy America, not with bombs or guns, but by subverting American culture, by taking the existing movement for racial and gender equality and subverting it using the ideology of class struggle.
Okay, now you know what's so stupid about this guy, what he's saying right now? This is the typical Republican. And this is kind of the entire Republican Party has been saying this stupid garbage for so long. That the Soviets had a plan and they're going to overthrow America by subverting its culture. Well, they may have had some plan, but did they have any money to implement this plan? How are they going to implement this? The truth of the matter is the entire Soviet Union was sponsored and bankrolled by Chase Manhattan Bank and the Rockefeller family. And that's how they were able to build up all their military armaments in World War II. And that's how they were able to sustain themselves after World War II with people like Khrushchev. Khrushchev was literally okay, look, maybe you don't believe me. First of all, I already read you the documents about how the Soviet Union, I already read you the documents in a video I did called Communist Bankers, how the history of the Republican Party, how the Republican Party overthrew Russia, put in this new Jewish communist revolt, right? And then they sustained it with U.S. aid through the whole time. And then after the Stalin period, you had Khrushchev come around, and he was basically, because I've got all the pictures of the meetings, and he's meeting with David Rockefeller, he's meeting with Nelson Rockefeller, Chase Manhattan Bank, and they're getting loans to keep the Soviet Union going. The Soviet Union was kept going by New York bankers, by the Rockefellers, the same people that set up the Chinese Communist Party, the same people that all that stuff is in the midst of changing right now with Donald Trump and what's happening. So, but anyway, so this idea that the Soviet Union had this grand scheme is idiotic. And I think that the reason why the Republicans say this is because they were actually the ones doing it. It was actually the Rockefeller family in particular that was leading it here in America. They were leading the whole social revolutions of the 1960s. It was the Rockefellers the whole Rockefeller network, which includes all the like big philanthropic, they call it, things, all the like, a lot of these are the Rockefeller family and their associates throughout New York, Warburg, and others, all the Jewish mafia people that are involved in finance. And then, of course, the Catholic Church that nobody sees. They're behind the Catholic Church was, without question, completely and utterly and entirely pushing the Cultural Revolution in the United States from behind the scenes. They're the ones that were they provide the agenda that gets implemented by these bankers. And it's all coordinated because this is their program for building out the new system. So that's the Republican Party. So it was the Republican Party that was backing the whole thing. And it was the Republican Party, like, let me give you another example of a top Republican. You ever heard of this guy, Barack Hussein Obama? Barack Obama from Chicago? Well, he was bankrolled and sponsored by top Republicans called the Annenbergs in Chicago. And they've got a house out here in Palm Springs, California, where Barack Obama used to meet with President Xi. And these are top Republicans that worked in the Reagan administration. And they're the ones that run the USC, the University of Southern California, Annenberg Shoah Foundation. Like, that's the Republican Party, okay? And so they're the ones who backed Barack Obama, and they're the ones that backed that other guy that was with Obama, who Sean Hannity goes on and on about all the time, about the guy who like was behind the terrorism in Washington D.C. to plant a bomb at the Pentagon or whatever. What was that guy's name? Who does Obama talk about all the time? Not Obama. Who's that guy that who's that guy that Sean Hannity talks about? So 1960s terror plot, Obama, Annenberg. It's like there's no way it'll give me that with that kind of entry. No. Oh, the Weather Underground. There you go. Obama's links to ex-radical examined. So this is NPR doing some ass covering. All right, the Weather Underground. The Weather Underground. What was that guy's name? Weather Underground. Let's look at this article. The Weather Underground. This is a republic. See, what people don't realize, this radical group. Oh, Bill Ayers. There you go. Bill Ayers. Okay, so let me tell you something. You've all heard of Bill Ayers, right? The Weather Underground. That's literally Republicans. That's the Republican Party. That's the Annenberg family. That the Annenberg family that runs the USC Shoah Foundation. That's the Weather Underground. So what I'm telling you, just to make it simple, is these radical left-wing extremist groups that came out of the 1960s that the Republican Party tries to blame on the Soviet Union, that was all backed by wealthy Republicans here in the U.S. that are still here. Their families are still in charge. They're still running everything. Like the Annenberg family. The Annenberg family. The Annenberg family. So anyway, so you have to understand that when you're listening to these Republicans talk about the Soviet Union is doing this and the Soviet Union's doing that, it's actually the Republican Party doing it, and it's the it's the richest people in the Republican Party that have been behind all of the financing of these Antifa left-wing extremist groups the whole time. And so let's listen to some more of this idiot.
Eventually, this gave way to what we call woke. Someone who is woke has supposedly woken up to the truth that all of history is about victims and oppressors, and America is a fundamentally racist patriarchy designed to suppress minorities.
Okay, so One of the reasons why I think the Republican Party does this is because they do have an agenda to make everything interracial and to make everything equal and to make everything interreligious. So it's the Republican leadership, like the Annenbergs and the Rockefeller, the financial leadership, like the Annenbergs, and look, President Donald J. Trump met with the Annenbergs in 2015. How do I know that? How do I know that? Because I was listening to the Michael Savage show. Michael Wiener Savage. Okay, he's a Jewish hardliner, Jewish Zionist conservative guy, right? I used to listen to his show all the time, and he's still on the air. Okay, Michael Savage had Trump on his show, and he was and he just happened to mention that he was meeting with the Annenbergs, and I don't know why he said that, because that was a foolish thing to say with me listening. And Michael Savage is like, oh yeah, I know them. So Michael Savage knows the Annenbergs, and Donald Trump met with the Annenbergs. And you know who knows the Annenbergs? And you know who else meets with the Annenbergs? You know who else is in Palm Springs all the time? Roger Stone. Roger Stone. Roger Stone. Why do you think there's so many sodomites in the Republican Party? Why do you think there are so many antichrist sodomites in the Republican Party? Because of Roger Stone and the Annenbergs. Yeah. So the idea of the Republican Party, the concept of the Republican Party, is globalism, interracialism, and interreligionist ideology, which is completely different than my ideology. And what I'm saying, just as an aside here, I'm not going to make the whole video about this, but what I'm saying is we need to set up a parallel system with our own state religion, and we need to formulate exactly what that's going to be, because otherwise we're just going to have more of the same, which is we need to have a state religion, and we need to basically go back to what the founding fathers said Americans are, in order to just salvage the white race, just to salvage it, not to change the U.S. I'm not even trying to change the U.S. The U.S. can go do whatever it's going to do. But see, what we need to do is go around and recruit all the white people and try and salvage them that we can from America. And if we can't salvage them all, we don't have to. And basically form a new economic, religious, political system. So it's religious, it's political, and it's economic. And it's based on this idea that we're going to develop our own economy based on our race, and we're going to have a state religion. And that state religion is going to be based on probably similar to like a very pure, a form. Well, I already know what it is. It's the original system of, it's the original code of Israel, which is the same as the code of Plato, which is the same as the code of Egypt. And it's kind of like Egypt, Israel in the Bible, the original Israelites of the Bible, Egypt, and Athens. Those three centers of philosophical origins, stripping away all the mythology, stripping away all of the superstition, stripping away all the and just getting to the scientific approach to what exactly were they were talking about, because they're talking about something very real having to do with your soul. But I've talked about that in other videos. It's the code of Israel, the solar code of Israel, which is about your soul. But anyway, so let's look at this.
That might sound like the progressive lefty, and it is, but some of this woke ideology has also become popular among some groups on the far right, and it could rip the conservative movement apart. Okay,
so I'm for that. First of all, what is a conservative? A conservative is somebody like Dave Rubin that is a baby snatcher, okay? Dave Rubin literally buys babies because he wants to pretend like he had a baby. And this is look, when you look at, now, you have to look at, when you look at these Republicans, right? They have a facade of normality, and that's on purpose. Like, they've literally, imagine being such a psychopath, but you're a total, like, imagine being a hardcore, like the most deviant type of sexual pervert you can imagine. but then having this pretense of being a normal person. That's Dave Rubin. Somebody who's interested in babies coming out of the womb, out of a woman's womb, and taking that and pretending like he just had a baby. See, that's total mental illness. That's the Republican Party. What were we talking about? What are we talking about? Let's listen to this idiot again.
Conservative movement apart.
Okay, good.
Matt, Shelley, and I sat down.
The conservative movement is, when I think of conservatives, I think of Dave Rubin, baby snatcher, hardcore, just hardcore pervert, hardcore baby snatching, buying babies out of a woman's uterus. That's what comes to mind when I think. So when someone says I'm a conservative, I immediately think of Dave Rubin abusing babies. What I mean by abuse means to use incorrectly. What's the incorrect use of a baby? The incorrect use of a baby is buying a baby from a woman and pretending that you just had a baby. See, that shouldn't even be legal. That's a misuse or an abuse of a baby, right? A baby's supposed to be with mom and dad, the father and the mother, and the mother is supposed to hold the baby and care for the baby and wean the baby and love the baby and just her whole life needs to just revolve around that baby. It's not a commodity to sell to a hardcore, mentally ill sex pervert, psychotic sex pervert called Dave Rubin. That's not what you do with a baby. Anyway, let's continue.
Talk about this with Dr. James Lindsay. He's an author, political commentator, and founder of the website.
He's a doctor. Is he a doctor of philosophy? Is that what he's supposed to be?
Podcast New Discourses. And he's joined us on our latest China Unscripted podcast.
So why did I start caring about this woke right all of a sudden? And like you said, we just had this big victory, right? And
now, just so you know, the panel is two Republican goofballs, right? And in the middle is like this Asian woman with a very round, circular head. And that's who he's talking to. This is the Republican Party.
What is it? Well, what is it is easy to answer. It's people on the right that have adopted the woke left tactics. They think like the woke left. They act like the woke left. In other words, they walk like a duck and they talk like a duck. So they're a duck. In other words, they have different values, different conclusions. They want to push so-called trad values. Sometimes they call themselves postmodern.
Okay, so people have different opinions. Oh my God, we got to stop that. They're not going along with what we said. That's the typical Republican. Everything about you got to understand. Perverts don't just pervert sex; they pervert everything. So a sodomite isn't just a sex pervert. A sodomite perverts everything. A sodomite lies about everything. A sodomite is involved in all kinds of evil behavior and subterfuge, right? That's the Republican Party. That's always been the Republican Party. It's always been the Republican. That's why I'm telling you, the Republican Party, the Annenberg family, they back Bill Ayers. They're not only the mainline civil rights movement, but the far left. What does that do psychologically? What it does, because it's a psyop. What it does psychologically is it says, see, what do they use that to do? What does the Republican Party use the far left to do? It uses the far left to get the white people to say, we need to cut off all this racism stuff because we're all equal and let's all just do this stuff together. Look at these stupid racist black people. I'm not a racist. Let's all join and just form this big union. See, that's the point of the Republican left-wing psyops, is to get the white people to say, those stupid black racists, I'm not a racist. See, they want you to say, because that's the whole thing. That's what the whole radio, every AM radio show. Those stupid woke racists on the left, I'm not a racist. I want to join the interracial, interreligious union where we form alliances with Muslims and Indians and Pakistanis and Turks and people from the Congo, and we all just join this one big happy, and we're all Americans. See, that's the Republican Party. That's the conclusion. They've got a foregone conclusion. How do they get you to reach that conclusion? They get these crazy racist black people to kill you, and then the leaders on the media say, see, this racism stuff is just no good, and we just need to cut out all the racism and all come together, and they're trying to divide us. They're trying to divide us. See, that's what the Republican Party says, because the goal of the Republican Party on behalf of the Catholic Church in Rome is to get everybody in one big pot that can be controlled. They don't want anyone leaving the pot. They don't want anyone leaving.
Trad or postmodern traditionalists. So not real traditional values, this kind of like hipster pastiche of traditional values. But they're going to try to push that and force everybody into it. They use cancel culture. They use smears. They use, all the nasty woke tricks that you're used to. They believe that power is the be all that ends all. They think that pursuing and grabbing and wielding power is absolutely necessary.
Of course it is. Of course it is. See, this is the thing. You have to understand, like I'm saying, sodomites will lie about it. It's not just when you say sodomites in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, it mentions in there that they're perverts, right? But it's not just that they're perverts. The whole thing is evil, right? The whole thing is evil. And because they're evil, they're perverts. That's the Republican Party. Let's continue.
And despite the fact, one of their biggest claims for the last several years, because these have been around for several years, has been, we're not going to be able to vote our way out of this. What are you going to do? Vote harder. And then allegedly, we just had this victory where we actually did vote harder and got our way out of it. Like,
got our way out of what? Got our way out of what? Got our way out of what? We're not out of anything. We have a new government, and it's a lot better. And the reason, I think one of the big reasons that they allowed Trump to become president this time, because somebody really stood down. We'll see how it goes, but we're not out of anything. We've still got all the illegal immigration problem. I mean, Trump shut down the border, which is good. Trump's doing a lot of good, but there's still like 20 million illegal immigrants here. We're still we haven't voted our way out of anything. We made a good change, but there's no the Republican Party is not. Donald Trump, as much as I like Donald Trump, is trying to save the U.S. He's not trying to save the white race. And so it's like I've told you before. You have to decide for yourself. What's more important to you? The future survival of the white race or the U.S. financial system? To me, it's the future survival of the white race. I don't care about I care about the U.S. financial system because I'm tied to it. And if it goes down, it's going to be painful. But ultimately, it doesn't matter, right? If you're saying we're going to destroy the white race in favor of the U.S. financial system and the treasury market, because that's the centerpiece of the U.S. government is the treasury market. That's what Donald Trump has to save. That's the reason why the Republicans have left the border open for the last 50 years. The Republicans. That's why no Republican president before did what Donald Trump did and just shut it all down and close the border. That's why Joe Biden opened the border. That's why they shipped all the jobs. The whole thing has been arranged over this centerpiece called the U.S. Treasury system, which is in the executive branch. So it's not about saving the white race in the U.S. and Washington, D.C. It's the complete opposite. But even with Donald Trump, who I like, his goal isn't to save the white race. It's to save the U.S. financial system. What I'm saying is, if you're a white person, because America was founded by the white people for the white people, that's a fact. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but white people exist, and our culture is not the same as everybody else, and we're not the same as nothing is the same as anything else, and there's no reason to race mix with anybody else. We can have good relations with other people, but this idea that we're all equal and that we're all going to mix in this big bag is so stupid and so just idiotic. And the people pushing it are pushing it to prop up an international financial order. And that's what they're trying to perpetuate. And the white people at some point got in the way of that because they needed cheap labor in the US and they needed to make a bunch of changes. Well, we saw how that worked out. I'll tell you how it worked out. It worked out to the point where now the government has admitted that we're on an unsustainable path. And we lost the war against Russia and Ukraine. And China's on the rise. Why? Because you destroyed the white race. That's why. That's why. Anyway, let's listen to this idiot.
So their prediction about how things work didn't seem to work out exactly right. But so that's what they are. But like I said, they've been around for a few years. What they've done is they've taken up with the sort of, they consider them forbidden right-wing philosophers. Not necessarily traditional conservatives, largely people like Thomas Carlyle, who's considered the father of both Maoism and the father of fascism. They take up with people.
Never even heard of that. That's what these Republicans are so weird and creepy. And well, what do sodomites do? They don't just pervert sex. They just lie about everything. That's the whole thing. Sodomites are not just sex perverts. They're liars. They're cheaters. They're subverters. That's what the Republican Party is.
People like Carl Schmitt, who was the
never heard of these people.
Third Reich, who came up with a variety of political philosophies about the absolute sovereignty of the executive and the idea that all politics comes down to a violent conflict between friend and enemy. That sounds a lot like how the Chinese use it. That's because the Chinese adopted all of Schmitt.
No one's reading any of this, stupid.
Been explicitly Schmittian for a long time. I mean, you can look that up. CCP's actual political philosophy.
No, but okay, look, he's going off about this stuff. Nobody even heard of any of this before, right? Nobody knows who these philosophers are that he's talking about. The people on the right that believe that you can't vote your way out of this, and we have to get back to traditional values, and it comes down to a battle of force, and that you have to use force. These are just people who are like observing what's happening around them. They're not like studying some rare philosophy that this idiot knows about in some university somewhere. Nobody's doing that. It's just normal people being like, oh, okay, this system doesn't work. And these people are basically running everything, and they're trying to keep us in this little system that they've created called the Republican Party that's run by all the people I just told you. And we don't want to go along with it anymore. Period.
Is Schmitt attached to what was either Mao Zedong or Deng Xiaoping thought? So
nobody knows who these people are.
That's their guy. They've got, like I said, Alistair McIntyre, who's like Marx is right, except about his conclusions.
Nobody knows about Alistair McIntyre. No, I don't even know who that person is. I've been paying attention to politics and I've been in all the circles that were the original circles that were backing the alt-right before it was called the alt-right. I was in these circles backing Donald Trump, backing all these right-wing groups, right? Never heard about any of these people that this idiot's talking about. Never heard of, not even, I have no idea who these philosophers are. This is ridiculous. This guy's full of shit.
Marx wanted to maintain the fruits of modernity, but the fact is that modernism itself is a problem. So Marx's critique can be salvaged and retooled to destroy modernism and classical liberalism completely. But Marx was essentially right. This is one of their core philosophers.
This doesn't even make any sense. I got a commercial. I'll tell you honestly, this guy, what's his name? This James Lindsay guy is basically just making shit up, and it's weird. Nobody knows who these people are that he's talking about. I guarantee you. I've never heard anyone use any of these names of any of these philosophers at all. The only people that anybody would like look at as a political figure in all this, what he's calling woke right, which is really just the alt-right. It was called the woke. Now he's calling it the woke right. And then it was called the alt-right. Before that, it was called whatever. It's always been the same group of people. It's always been people associated with white nationalism. And so the only political philosopher that I could say that people would point to was Adolf Hitler. And they said, and it's not because they hated Jews so much, although some of them do hate. Some of the Jew hate stuff is ridiculous and over the top, and it's almost weird now because it's so mainstream that it's almost idiotic. And I don't want to go into the whole thing, but as looking at some of these circles, I'm telling you that part of it is because you get these Catholics joining in, and I think that they're part of a separate thing, and they want everyone to join Roman Catholicism. So they jump on the bandwagon, and they're like, "Hey guys, yeah, it's these Jews, and let's all join the Roman Catholic Church," either knowingly or unknowing that the Roman Catholic Church is literally the people that blew up the World Trade Center through the CIA, George Tenet, did the COVID hoax thing with Anthony Fauci, and the Pope, who invested in the whole thing, was behind the civil rights movement in the 1960s with they don't know anything. Lucas Gage, I don't know if Stu Peters is Catholic. Lucas Gage, Nick Fuentes are the two big ones. Okay, but it's not just them. It's also the Steve Bannons and the General Flynn's and all these people that see. If you listen to Steve Bannon, what does he say? He says he moves everything back. Look, you get all this right-wing energy, and it gets converted back into maintaining the status quo of the race mixing, religion mixing order. Right? That's all it is. That's Steve Bannon. That's Nick Fuentes, Mr. I'm a lot. See, Nick Fuentes is allied with Muslims. Nick Fuentes is allied with, you see what I mean? So what I'm saying is, we need to have our own state religion, and it's not going to be the Catholic Church. It's going to be the purest form of Christianity. That was what the objective was of the original Freemasons, which they didn't really do because they didn't have all of the knowledge that we have now about certain topics. I don't want to go into too deeply, but with regard to some of the old books that were found in the 1800s and stuff, because you got to imagine the Enlightenment movement really started in the 1500s with the Protestant Reformation, the 1500s, the 1600s, the 1700s. Then it got subverted by the Catholics, who tried to say this is a dangerous movement. We need to get in control of it and then use it for our own purposes. And that's why they ended up infiltrating and taking over Freemasonry and using it to overthrow the kings that were all involved in Freemasonry, and then bring in the new order, which is the Republican order that we're under now. And all this stuff that we're under now, this is all a creation of the Roman Catholic Church with their proxies like the Jewish Mafia and ISIS and Al Qaeda and Black Lives Matter and LGBT and Dave Rubin. Anyway, where we're going? And James Lindsay, this idiot.
The fascist philosopher Julius Evola. So these are the kind of guys that they're talking. They're big fans of Hans Hermann Hoppe, who was also
Never heard of these people. Never heard of Hans Hermann Hoppe. Julius Evola, yeah. I mean, but nobody sat and like talked about Julius Evola. Like literally all the things he's saying, he's just making this shit up. He's such a lying little weasel. Typical sodomite Republican.
Marxist methods, although to different conclusions. Some of them flirt with Hitler, who explicitly said that he was using Marxist methods and intended to complete.
That one's true. So people, but they didn't flirt with Hitler. That was like the main guy. It's literally National Socialism. That's all that it was. Nobody other than Julius Evola, I've heard that name, but no one sat around reading all these Julius Evola books. Nobody even really, people would put up clips of Adolf Hitler giving a speech or something. And like, yeah, Hitler was saying good things. And none of these things were against Jews particularly. So maybe one or two things here or there. But see, you got to understand, the whole thing wasn't to focus on the Jews. That's become the focus more now that it's run by Tucker Carlson and Jimmy Dore, actually. Because all these people, here's how the CIA, in my opinion, subverts the right wing. Is because there's Jewish mafia involved in these crimes that are being carried out by Washington, D.C. And a lot of it, there's Jewish mafia involved in it, and Mossad's involved in it with the CIA and stuff. So what the CIA does is once people start to uncover these crimes and look into the crimes, what it does is the CIA has done a couple things over the years. one of the things that they did, or they used to do, was say it's all a Nazi conspiracy. That was one of the things that they did. And Alex Jones was a promoter of that garbage, and so was Bill Cooper, who I liked. And then the other, because that was all bullshit. And then the other thing that they did was with the neo-Nazi guys, is they're like, it's all the Mossad, and the Mossad secretly controls everything, and Israel runs everything, and Netanyahu's the real president, and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, well, it's not run out of, you're right, like, it's not run out of Tel Aviv, dude. It's run out of DC. Like, no, you're just siding with the Jews. That's what they would do. Like, it made people that mentally ill. And the one group that, well, there was a group at one time that identified the Roman Catholic Church and the Jesuits, and that group faded away in favor of it's all Israel and the Mossad, which is not true. But one of the mistakes that the people who were pointing out that it was the Roman Catholic Church made was saying that Hitler was a Jesuit, which he wasn't. Hitler was not a Jesuit. The Jesuits tried to kill Adolf Hitler. So there's a lot of confusion in that area. I've tried to clarify some of it.
Beat them, although for his own methodologies, a lot of them are nationalists, but their definition of nation is ethno-nationalist, and it matches exactly Stalin's definition of nationalism.
See, he's trying to say that. Look, did you hear what he just tried to do? Look. So this is the key point of the Republican Party, the Republican sodomite party of James Lindsay. He's saying that they're nationalists, the so-called woke right, or the alt-right, or whatever you want to call it. He's saying they're nationalists, but they're ethno-nationalists. Okay, dummy. You mean like George Washington? You mean like Ben Franklin? You mean like all the founding fathers? You mean like all of our ancestors for thousands of years? You mean like that? Because that's what a nation is. A nation isn't a race-mixed experiment of the Vatican, of the Roman Catholic Church and the Republican parties that they control through the unions. That's not what a nation is. It's never been. So what this boils down to is, it boils down to the Republican Party trying to redefine what a nation is through race mixing and religion mixing. That's never been a nation. See, that's the point. That's the point. It's not that we're the woke right or anything else. No, we're just like, we're the normal people who says the thing you're inventing is totally alien and fake, right? And whose agenda is it? I'm saying it's the Roman Catholic Church that founded Washington, D.C. and has all these proxies. They've got the Republican Party, and they've got the unions, and they control the Democrat Party. They control the Democrat Party through the unions. They control the Republican Party through the banking establishment. And they've got ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and they've got all kinds of ways to do it. Now, Trump was at odds 100% with the Pope. The Pope didn't like Trump. That's why the Pope used the unions to incite Black Lives Matter and Antifa to burn down the cities and attack the MAGA people, right? And who was it that investigated Trump when he came into the presidency in 2016? It was the Republican Party. The Republican Party, that's all over Fox News. They were the ones that back in 2016 ordered the DOJ to open up an investigation of Donald Trump. That's what I'm telling you. And that's the same Republican Party that James Lindsay is. That's who it's Lankford, it's James Lindsay, it's Lindsey Graham, it's Mitch McConnell, and his cocaine shipments, Mr. Bananas, Mr. Dole Banana Farm, and the cocaine boats, Mitch McConnell, and his Taiwanese wife that runs the shipping business out of China into America. Anyway, what we're talking about?
The nation is ethno-nationalist, and it matches exactly Stalin's definition of.
Okay, it matches Stalin's definition. Oh, you know who else's definition it matches? George Washington's and the first Congress of America. In other words, it matches everyone's definition for all of recorded history, you moron. It matches the definition of a nation in the Bible, you moron. Okay, the Bible says a nation is a race of people. Everyone on earth, for as long as people have existed, know what a nation is. It has to do with ethnicity and culture and language and race. It's never been anything else. See, that's the thing. They've tried to turn a nation into something else. Who? The Roman Catholic Church, who says there's no Jews or Greek. They got that from Paul. A sodomite will pervert everything. There's no Jews or Greeks, or free or slave, because we're all equal. See, that's not a nation, right? This is where the problem started. Is with the right. I'm not saying Paul was wrong about everything, or maybe you interpret it that different. But as far as I'm concerned, I think Paul should be removed. You don't need Paul. Let me make this real simple for you, because I'm starting a state. I'm going to back a state religion, and I'm not the one going to be running it. I'm just going to set it up. I'm not the one running everything. I'm just telling you. The only thing you need to understand, if you want to understand all of Christianity from beginning to end, there's only one verse in the Bible you need to read and understand. Just one. You don't need Paul. You don't need anything. You don't need to read all those books. You literally don't need to read anything other than one verse in the Bible. And it's Genesis 1 verse 3. Genesis chapter 1 verse 3. That's the only thing. If you just read that one verse, you will understand the entire Bible from beginning to end. If you understand that one verse, you'll understand the entirety of the Bible and the story of Jesus and the story of Noah and the story of the Israelites in the desert and everything, and King Solomon and everything. You won't need you literally wouldn't have to read anything else if you understood that. You'll understand more than any of these Christian pastors who say idiotic things all day, every day. And you'll understand more than any rabbi who doesn't know anything, because they wrote the Talmud that has nothing to do with anything. And all these Muslims that have this fake Jesus and this cube that they worship, see, all that stuff is all garbage. But what does Genesis 1:3 say? It says, and God said, let there be light. And there was light. The end. Beginning to end. That's all you need to know. What does that mean? That means God's word is light. That's the entire theme of the Bible, that God's word is light. What is light? Light means the truth, also called the Logos, which manifests as a boat that saves Noah, that manifests as a golden ark that's carried around by the Israelites, containing the word of God, followed by the 12 tribes, that manifests as a man called Jesus Christ, that argues with the rabbis and is killed at Golgotha. See, it's the same story. It's Genesis 1:3. And that's why the Scottish Rite Freemasons, I don't even know if they know that that's what this means. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe they did, but they certainly aren't implementing any of this now, because we live in a dark age shithole in America and Europe. Completely dark age, completely dystopian hellhole. So there's no way they know what it means. If they run anything, there's no way they know what it means, because they don't implement it. And if they did, they don't tell anybody about it, because they're a secret society and they have to keep their mouths shut. Well, then what good are they? Order out of chaos. That's Genesis 1:3. Out of this chaos comes a light, the word of God. That's the religion. That's all you have to know.
Nationalism from Marxism and the national question in 1913, which he adopted in Vienna after going and bringing his Bolshevik ideology and witnessing the way that German folk nationalism kind of interacted in the Austrian milieu before World War One. And so it's like, this is just a hot mess of bad ideas that have kind of come together in this pursuit of power for these guys. So yeah, I started to use the term a few months ago. I didn't coin the term. I think popularized it and put it on a map, as I tend to do. I've tried to expose these guys, but the problem is, frankly, nobody cares. What people are doing is, as my friend said to me the other day, the boys just want 5 days in the sun to celebrate. And here you are saying this. So I'm going to point out, you asked, we just had a victory. There's kind of this tone, like, do we have to do this now? And I think we do have to do this now. And in fact, I started before the election. We have not done this victory. I decided at the beginning of October this year, so a full month before the election, I've been holding my tongue and holding my tongue. It's like, strategically unwise. Let the election happen, then we can tackle the woke right. So for better part of a year, I've been sitting here.
Right. So he held his tongue because they wanted our votes, and then they want to subvert it back to their stupid global Catholic race mixing, religion mixing. Let's all join hands with the Muslims, and let's let Muslims build little embassies all over America where they have like their own laws. Like, is it an embassy? Not an embassy, but like their own little districts where they have their own law. Like, look, I just wrote on this. Nation has always been racial since the beginning of recorded history. And then I said, read the 1790s Naturalization Act. The founders of USA never supported race mixing. This idea that a nation is anything else but a race of people, an ethnic race of people, is a completely new and frankly false idea that doesn't even work. And you want me to prove to you that it doesn't work? Go listen to everyone in the Treasury Department right now and in Doge and all these people who I'm not even allowed on Twitter again. Go listen to them say that the path we're on is unsustainable. The financial path is unsustainable. What does that mean? That means for the last 50, 60, 100 years, we've been on an unsustainable financial path. And it was the people in charge of this whole thing, which created this whole race mixing system, have put us on an unsustainable financial path. So it didn't even work. Everything that they said, everything that they're trying to prop up doesn't work. It's a complete waste.
Be unleashed to talk about this problem that I've been watching build. But in October, I was like, holy crap, they're positioning themselves to fill Trump's administration if he wins or to spark a civil war if he loses. So we better speak up now. And so I started to speak up ahead of the election, very concerned that these people, like all wokes, who are obsessed with gaining power and multiplying their own power, are going to insinuate themselves into every single possible thing that they can following this Trump win. And even though most of them were like vigorously pro DeSantis during the nasty primary, and then they were.
That's not even true. Nobody gave a shit about DeSantis. That's so stupid. This guy really doesn't know what he's talking about. He wasn't involved in any of these circles for the last 20 years like I've been. I've been like literally involved in every single one of these circles that he's talking about. And like 99.9% of what he's saying is bullshit. Other than the fact that he said that some of the people like Adolf Hitler. That's the only thing he said that was true. Or Julius Evola. I've heard of Julius Evola. I can't even tell you what Julius Evola ever said. No, I mean, I know that people had a couple Julius Evola quotes here and there. It's like, this guy's so full of shit. Typical Republican sodomite.
Some of them were outright anti-Trump in the lead up to the election. They've all now claimed the mantle of Trump.
That's not true either. There were a lot of people that were anti-Trump that were part of the some of these right-wing groups, and they still are. I know, because they're my friends on Facebook. And if I say anything good about Trump, they're like, Trump's a Zionist or something. Trump's a commie. Like, they're still doing the same thing. Like, everything he's saying is just bullshit. Typical Republican lying scumbag.
We're Trump, and we're the true inheritors of Trump. This was a big rejection of woke left racism, and that's what this is all about. And so they are.
No, that's not. It's not just about rejecting woke left racism. It's about rejecting the Republican Party. It's about saying everything that you guys have created is bullshit. It's about saying everything that you stand for is a lie. Look, what does the Republican stand for? Republican Party, the conservative, right? I'm not talking about Trump's his own animal. That's why we supported Trump, is because Trump is just, and some of those people don't like Trump anymore. I still like Trump. I still like Trump because Trump's like this wild animal. He really is changing things, and that's why I support him. But what is the Republican Party that tried to invest? What is the Republican Party that ordered the DOJ to investigate Trump over ties to Russia in 2016? What do they stand for? Race mixing, religion mixing, same old, nothing, bullshit. global capitalism, free markets, free market global capitalism. Same bullshit, stupid shit.
Are claiming to be the only true conservatives and the only true people who understand the problem. People like me don't know what the problem really is. We don't have solutions, blah, blah, blah. And we're troublemakers.
No, you are the problem because you're a Republican. Republicans are garbage. The official conservative Republicans of the Annenbergs who backed William Ayers and Barack Obama and the rest of it, you are garbage. As far as politically, you're political garbage. That's what I'm saying.
So we all have to be excluded from access to Trump World. I get told daily, you will have no access to Trump World anymore at all. No
That sounds
chance,
good.
because we're going to keep you boxed out by
Good.
these lunatics. So my goal has been to think, what are these guys going to do if they get in positions of power? They're going to do what woke people always do. They're going to use the position of power to hire more people exactly like them to consolidate their power until we have a problem that we can't freaking manage.
What problem? Oh, the problem of what? What would be the problem?
And I don't even think that's their main purpose, but I felt like it was important to speak up. I think they have a totally different main purpose.
What do you think their main purpose is?
I think their main purpose is to split the coalition that delivered Trump into pieces, is to get rid of the Jews, get rid of the disaffected Democrats, get rid of all these people who just came over for the first time, voted for Trump, maybe the first time they ever voted for a Republican. First of all, that's a broad coalition of people who voted for Trump. First, we got to get rid of them. So Trump loses his gigantic cross-dimensional or cross-political base of support, probably does not have enough vote power to carry in 26 or 28. Then there are some deep fault lines actually in the conservative movement. Are we pro-Israel or anti-Israel? It's never about the CCP. They don't talk about the CCP for a minute because everybody should be on the same side of that one. What they talk about is Israel. Why? Because they know that they can drive a wedge into the conservative movement itself while scaring off all the Jews.
Okay, and so let's say all that's so people are there's a whole big faction of people that don't support Israel. That's what you're saying. Okay, so what? Look, I didn't even really have an opinion on Israel, other than I don't want some group out of AIPAC or Mossad infiltrating my government and trying to. But look, there's been a problem with the Israel group for a long time, which is they're obsessed with their little pet project called Israel. But see, James Lindsay's not against that, even though it's an ethno state. See, that's the whole weird thing about it. That's why the groups that I've always been a part of are like, fuck all these other groups. We're going to do our own thing for our own people. And all this other stuff can just go by the wayside because it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter because that's not us. So, being lectured day in and day out by somebody like Ben Shapiro or Mark Levin or some other Zionist, it's like, okay, bro, I'm not Jewish. Why do you keep talking? Why do you keep promoting your stuff to me? It's kind of like, I heard that before, and this has nothing to do with what I'm doing. That's always been the position. It's like, it's just a waste of time. Just like this whole we need a race mix with Arabs and Muslims is a waste of time. And that's also promoted by the Republican Party. The Republican Party is not trying to. Here's the thing. The Republican Party isn't saying we need to extricate ourselves from all these, like, for instance, they brought in people from Somalia into Minnesota. Why not just tell them all to leave? Well, because you can't do that because they're citizens and we have freedom of religion. That's like something Patrick Bet-David would say, right? Well, according to the founding fathers, a citizen is a free white person. So yeah, a free white person, if he wants to practice a religion, he can practice any religion he wants because he's a citizen. See, that's where the trouble starts. The trouble starts with, how do you define a citizen? And the way the founding fathers defined it is different than the way that they defined it in the after the Civil War. After the Civil War and then into the 1960s. And so that's what led to this unsustainable path that we're on. And so we're saying, well, then that was a waste of time. And what I'm saying is, if you are white, everything else is a waste of time other than the preservation of the white race. Everything else is a waste of time. Everything else is a complete waste of time. You can always build another financial system. You can always build another government. But if you destroy the white race, then if you completely destroy the white race, how do you recover from that? You can't. So that's the only thing that really matters politically is your nation,
If they
your
can
race.
just hammer that wedge down on yes, Israel, no Israel. We can make it very simple. We don't have to get into their fancy terminology of Zionism or Jewish power or any of these other conspiracies or whatever else. We don't have to get into, or is it anti-Semitism? It's not. No, the goal is pro-Israel, anti-Israel, and to split the conservative movement around that and to make it as messy and nasty as possible so that, again, we're not unified. We're not pouring our resources into fixing the country in the time that we have.
See, he wants to fix the country. That's what I've been saying the whole time. They're worried about their established order. I'm not. I don't care about any of that. I only care about one thing politically. My entire interest politically is the survival of the white race, so that the white race survives into the future. And if the white race survives in the future, then there will be other races that benefit from that. There'll be black people that benefit from that. There'll be all kinds of people that are not white that benefit from that, if it does survive. Because let's say the white race doesn't survive, and instead everything's run by China, or everything's run by somebody else, probably China. Well, that's stupid. The only thing worth maintaining politically is the white race. If the white race survives, and these other races that we've been associated with, like the African Americans, they'll do better. If we go down, they're going to be screwed. So what I'm saying is, as far as the financial system, we created that. We can create another one. We can create another government. We can create another financial system. We can create another anything. We don't need to be in some big thing with all, unless you want to say we're in this big thing with these other races for our own benefit, and then they're going to benefit too. We'll have a harmonious relationship. That I could get behind, but not that it. See, what they're trying to say is that race doesn't matter, and it just is totally irrelevant because we're all equal. Well, that's not true. See, that's not true. Not even remotely true. But that's the Republican Party. That's what they've been saying the whole time.
Do that right now, and that we're not.
And so that's why they sold us out. That's why when I go, that's why I see homeless white people all over the place. See, you got to understand something. All the resources in America are just being sold off to foreigners, not just from all over the world, from China, from all over East Asia, from West Asia, from all over the place. They're just sold off. And so then the white race of Americans, they end up living in the park. They end up hooked on drugs. They end up having no jobs. Of course, why would they have a job? Because you need the cheapest labor. So then they're going to import labor. So in other words, the whole thing has been geared towards destroying the white race, which is the only thing that actually matters. So what I'm saying is that's why the National Socialism model, to me, makes a lot of sense. Not because it's anti-Semitic, but because it's called putting your own people first. That's what Jews do. Jews put their people first. I'm not against that. See, I'm not against, like, if you say the state of Israel, I don't really have a strong opinion about it, other than I don't want to hear from Ben Shapiro or some other person trying to manipulate me into serving their interests, right? But when I see them putting their people first, I respect that. When I see that they care about their people over there, I respect that. Well, that's what the Germans were trying to do. That's what the National Socialist movements all across Europe were trying to do. They were trying to put their people first. That's why the U.S. government, on behalf of the Jesuit operations base called Washington, D.C., and the Federal Reserve System that it's associated with, had to bomb Germany because Germany was trying to put its people first. See, that's the thing. That was the whole idea behind the MAGA movement, and from our perspective, in the first place, you got to put your people first. And with Trump's idea, it's like, well, that's America, so that includes all these other races. But from our perspective, it's the white race. You have to put our people first. We, the white race, have to put our people first because no one else is going to. That's the whole point. That's why when you go to every 7-Eleven or grocery store, or not grocery store, 7-Eleven and gas station, they're usually run by people from India. For some reason, I don't know why, but they have some network where they get all the gas station contracts for their own people. because they're putting their people first here in America. So that's what I'm saying. If you don't put your own people first, you end up with nothing. And so the Republicans have lured everybody into this false ideology that we are all part of some big equality, race mixing, religion mixing system, which isn't true. And E. Michael Jones promotes that, and all these Catholics and Steve Bannon. And see, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's Catholic because it's based on there's no Jews or Greeks or slaves are free for we're all one. And even though these aren't all Christians, but we're all made in the image of God too, because we all came from Adam and Eve, which I need to do another video about what that story is about, Adam and Eve. It's not about what people think it's about. The story of Adam and Eve is, just to give you an example. If you ever listen to these stupid pastors on the radio, I was just listening to one a couple of days ago. Lucifer this, and Lucifer that, and Lucifer this, and Lucifer that, and Lucifer this, and Lucifer that. And Lucifer, Satan, and Satan is Lucifer, blah, 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 blah. Anyone who calls Lucifer Satan is a heretic, actually. If you call Lucifer Satan, you're a heretic. I'm going to have to make another video about this. Lucifer means the light bearer. So go back and read Genesis 1:3, and it says, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. If you call anything else Lucifer, you're a heretic. You're a heretic. And no, Isaiah 14:12 in the original Greek Bible does not say Lucifer, has nothing to do with Lucifer. No, the serpent in the garden is not Lucifer. And no, none of these other, there's no Lucifer took a third of the angels. That doesn't say that anywhere in the Bible, that Lucifer did this or Lucifer did. They're just, see, this is the thing, is that these pastors are very lazy with language, and they don't know what any of these words mean. The serpent in the garden represents Egypt and the expulsion of the Israelites from Egypt and their temptation to worship other gods. But I'll have to make another video about that. I guess I'll end off there. Talk to you later.